Sir, could we start with what Chief Sampson was talking about a bit this morning? How concerned are you, or should the city be, about being reimbursed in the short term for its emergency expenditures?
I'm not concerned. There are very strict protocols in place as to how these things get reimbursed. Sometimes it takes time. Sometimes there's arguing over the receipts. But our experience in 2013, our experience in Slave Lake, have been that the provincial and federal governments really do live up to their commitments, although we fight about receipts a lot, so I'm not worried about it at all.
His concerns seem to be about the amount of time it might take in terms of whether there's an emergency that his folks have to respond to in the short term.
Yeah, the only thing that I'm concerned about there is to ensure that we replenish the supplies. I understand that we are tapped out on all of our disaster supplies, and that is some millions of dollars. But the City of Calgary is in a good cash position. We're always in a good cash position. And if the city has to lend the money to SEMA to replenish the cupboard, we'll do that.
Why will we ensure secondary suites never die?
Such a perfectly nice day, and you ruin it with such a question. Well, I've said this many, many, many times, is that the current situation is untenable. There's only one member of council who has ever said that he likes the situation the way it is now, where every single person has to come to council and beg on their hands and knees for the right to make a change to their property. It's not right. And council has sent administration back nearly 40 times to come up with compromises, but council is not willing to compromise. And at some point, council has to show some political leadership on this question. And every other city in the country has done this. We seem to have this as a bête noire. It's difficult for us to get through this situation, but really, council has to show some leadership. And quite frankly, those opposed to secondary suites are the ones who have to show leadership here.
So what do you think of the call then for plebiscite?
We don't plebiscite what people can do with their land generally in land use. I think it's sort of a silly idea. Council just has to do its job, which is make a decision, instead of sending administration back over and over and over again for more compromises, which you ask them to do it, like this one today, 14-1, council said, we can deal with that. And now we've had hours and hours of debate on something. The council passed 14-1. People just got to take some leadership.
It seems to a lot of people, though, the reason it goes back to administration more times is that the people who really want them won't take no for an answer.
It's the opposite. It's the people who say no, who don't really say no, who keep asking for other compromises. The folks who are in favor have been compromising all over the place.
And for people who don't read council agendas, what's actually before you today?
Today is nothing. It's very technical stuff. There was a rule that restricted the size of a basement suite to a certain size, even though the basement was bigger. So you had to build a fake wall. So we're getting rid of that rule. We are in certain land use districts. You can have a 9-meter wide lot, and in other ones you can have 12. We're centralizing that at 9 meters. These are very small technical changes which actually don't make any difference to who needs to come to council. It just makes a difference to what needs to be relaxed or not relaxed when administration is issuing a development permit. These are very technical changes. Council voted on them 14-1. I'm frankly dumbfounded that there's been this much debate over them.
Is the debate on topic in your opinion?
No. And certainly when we had members of the public come and perhaps they weren't properly informed on the issue, the debate was not at all on topic. And several times I had to remind the members of the public at the public hearing that we're talking about these technical changes, not the broad issue of secondary suites.
I think the people who are opposed to secondary suites, though, see all of these small incremental changes as adding up to one day they're going to look at the books and go, oh my God, we actually improved secondary suites without realizing it.
It is very unlikely that would happen given the amount of public interest in this issue.
Do you find that the laneway suites are going to be having the same opposition as traditional secondary suite debates? Or?
Well, what was really interesting in the public hearing that we had on this is several people who not 6 months ago told us they were opposed to all secondary suites in any shape or form in their home, in their neighborhoods, now said, well, basement suites are fine. It's just backyard suites that are the problem. So let's see how those goalposts continue to move.
Any other topics, folks?
Can you tell me what your thoughts are on charging for parking rides?
Oh, I think this is a terrible idea. I believe that what we have is, let me back up. When council first started charging $3 a day for park and ride before I was mayor, I suggested it was one of the worst decisions the council ever made. Because what you essentially were doing where, when we fight about a $6 a month increase to property taxes, suddenly for a subset of people who take transit, we had increased their monthly cost not by $6, right, but by 3 times 20, right, $60 a month. And these are folks who are trying to be multimodal, who are trying to use transit for part of their ride. And because they're using transit for part of their ride, we're able to have something like 8 or 11 lanes of traffic going into downtown that we don't need anymore. So why would we penalize those folks when people who drive their entire trip don't have those costs at all? So, council compromised with 50% reserved, 50% free. I strongly believe that despite what planners say about free parking causing problems for transit use, in fact, people who park and ride are not bad people. They're not people that we need to force onto feeder buses. They're people who, for one reason or another, the bus system doesn't work. If you live in Woodbine, for example, that bus takes forever. It can triple the time of your commute to get to the LRT station. The Southwest BRT will fix that particular problem. But if you have to drop your kids off at daycare or you got hockey right after work, I would much rather have you take the train to a station and drive from that station than to drive all the way downtown. And so I think that adding this very large financial disincentive to people to take transit is a big problem. Now that said, should we figure out a way to charge people more who live outside of the city limits for parking? Yes, we should, because they don't use their property taxes to pay for transit. Should we look at demand-based pricing that allows people to use the spots on a daily basis that are not used by the monthly parkers? Absolutely. Should we look at changing the time so that the spots become free at 9 a.m. instead of 10 a.m.? Absolutely. But charging for making the lots 100% reserved, I think is a terrible idea, and I think that it goes exactly against our goal, especially in a time of declining ridership, which is to encourage people to take transit.
Do you like the ratio between reserved and free?
I think 50-50 is fine. I could be convinced to change it. I think 100% reserved is an exceptionally poor idea.
And it was proven when the first experiment happened that the Northeast lots were empty because people had to pay.
Well, that's right, and in the Northeast we're blessed with a grid system and decent feeder bus, but we also have folks, some folks, and not just in the Northeast, throughout the system, who simply couldn't afford the extra price. And I think that penalizing them and making transit only for people with means seems to be a bit backwards to me.
One last question or round.
Could I ask you about there's a lot of social media chatter about Darby Allen being made the parade marshal of the Stampede Parade. Do you have any thoughts?
I have no thoughts. You know me, I rarely have opinions on anything. But the Stampede Board makes those decisions, and it would be inappropriate for me to interfere in those decisions. So thanks very much.
Thanks, all.